Browns QBs await decision on any earth-shattering or earth-shaking changes to camp reps. Berea, there was none of the typical training camp hustle and bustle on the practice fields at the Browns facility on July 27th. That's normal for what was the first off day of camp. Inside of the building, however, there was the activity that will set the course of the next week, at least, of the centerpiece of Browns training camp. Although the players may be off, the coaching staff will be huddled up determining what direction they go with the battle to be the first quarterback up when the season opens against the Cincinnati Bengals. Yeah, it'll be a great meeting on Sunday because we'll have these 4 days, which are block 1, and then next week we start putting the pads on, which is great, quarterbacks coach Bill Musgrave said before the third camp practice on July 25th. The more we can simulate game-type situations for the QBs, the better off they'll be. So next week will be important, and I don't know if there'll be any earth-shattering or earth-shaking changes. The first 4 days of camp, as well as most of the off-season program in May and early June, has centered around a somewhat two-pronged competition. There have been experienced starters Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett on one hand, and rookie draft picks Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders on the other. Within those days, especially since camp began on July 23rd, has been some tweaking here or there in terms of the format. There's been more or less 11 on 11 reps for a given quarterback on a given day, and who has worked with the first unit, specifically the first offensive line, has at least changed a bit between Flacco, Pickett, and Gabriel. The overall breakdown, however, has been relatively close in terms of number of team sets for each quarterback. Team sets, it should be noted, are 11 on 11s, 7 on 7s, and modified 7 on 7, where there's an offensive line in front, but the defensive line is comprised of reserve offensive linemen who only take a couple of steps off the snap. There's a bunch of reps to go around in terms of mentally, physically the combination, but pressing, I don't believe in that, Gabriel, the third-round pick out of Oregon, said July 25th. I'm a true believer in just being consistent, being right where your feet are and maximizing the reps you do get. The moment you're thinking about the reps you don't have, you're not focusing on the reps you do have. Through 4 days of camp, the Browns have collectively run 42 such sets total. The breakdown of how many sets for each quarterback is 12 for Gabriel, 11 for Pickett, 10 for Sanders, and 9 for Flacco. Those sets, though, tell only part of the story. The sets with the first unit/offensive line and against the first defensive unit tell a slightly different story, with 8 such series going to Flacco, 7 to Pickett, and 4 to Gabriel. It's really, like I said, a day at a time, Pickett said July 24th. You don't know what you're going to get that day. You're just showing up and prepared to. I think every guy here is prepared to go play the entire practice. That's kind how I look at it. You don't know what you're going to get, so whatever schedule for that day, I want to make sure that I know everything inside and out, so whatever reps I do get, I can take advantage of it. It's those numbers that are the ones to pay attention to when the Browns resume camp practices on July 28th. How much they change could signal a true pivot point in the direction of the competition. The next 5 practices, July 28th to 30th then, after an off day, August 1st to 2nd, will be the last full week of work the Browns can do as a team before they transition into the joint practice/preseason games portion of camp. They'll have a joint practice in Charlotte on August 6th before an August 8th preseason opener at the Carolina Panthers, plus 2 joint practices August 13th to 14th in Philadelphia before the second preseason game August 16th at the Philadelphia Eagles. It's tough to have expectations, Flacco said July 24th. I think there's been some communication between probably all the quarterbacks and Kevin, so, yeah, I guess I know a little bit what to expect at least for the next week, but you can't ask me. It's hard for me to tell what it's going to look like 2-3 weeks from now. The one who's been absent from first-team drills has been Sanders, a 5th-round pick from Colorado. Although he hasn't worked with the number ones, over the last 2 days of camp, he has at least gotten some reps with the second unit, as well an extended time on a separate field during the modified red zone 7-on-7 period on the 4th day of camp. Sanders, who spoke before the 3rd day of camp, wasn't allowing the lack of reps with a specific grouping to throw him off. Instead, he was still using the reps he wasn't in as a way to continue to learn an offense that's still relatively new to him. I would say just have a deeper level of understanding, because I know whenever I get my opportunity, one got to maximize it, he said. So that's something you have to change in the mentality standpoint, and the mental standpoint is, okay, I just got to think about what I could do to get better even if I'm not getting reps. It's no problem. The late July sun poured down on Berea, Ohio, and the quarterbacks of the Cleveland Browns found themselves in that curious limbo where whispers move faster than footballs. Camp was in full swing, the fans' bleachers buzzing with speculation, yet on the practice field itself a strange tension hung over every snap, every throw, every head coach's glance toward the depth chart. Shedeur Sanders tossed a ball to a trainer, just a warm-up rep, nothing fancy, yet he felt the weight of eyes tracking the spiral. Beside him, veteran Kenny Pickett adjusted his wristband, the one with the play sheet tucked beneath it. Dylan Gabriel stood by the Gatorade table, muttering a rhythm under his breath like some quarterback incantation. And behind them all, lurking in the backdrop, a sense of something looming. The previous night, word had spread that head coach Kevin Stefanski had called a late meeting with his staff. Not a routine breakdown of film. Not a simple charting of statistics. The rumor said he'd used words like earth-shattering and earth-shaking, that there might be changes coming to the way reps were divided. Anybody else hear that? Pickett muttered as they stood in line for a red zone drill. Yeah, said Gabriel, voice low. I heard it from a security guy who heard it from an intern. That's how these things start, right? Shedeur cracked a grin, though his chest felt tight. Man, if they start giving me first-team reps, maybe I'll buy that intern dinner. The three of them laughed, but it was nervous laughter, brittle as dry grass. Out on the far sideline, the media huddled like a flock of black-clad crows, their cameras raised, waiting for a sign of anything. A quarterback yelling, a coach whispering too long into a headset, an equipment manager running in with a clipboard. When Stefanski finally walked out, wearing his trademark visor, the atmosphere changed. Conversations died. Even the squeak of cleats on the turf seemed to hush. He carried no papers, no grand declaration, just a single whistle slung around his neck. All right, fellas, he barked. Warm-up period, then we'll rotate like usual. And yes, before you ask, no earth-shattering changes today.